Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Debbie if you're new, and if you're returning, it's great to have you back. Today we are in the kitchen. It's afternoon. We worked this morning and we have to fix some mistakes. So on the previous video you saw us doing the apricot and the apricot hot pepper jams. They didn't set. So now we need to fix our mistakes, and thankfully we can do that, and we need to thicken it up some more because it didn't get thick in the jars. It didn't set. So the ingredients, the measurements for doing that is for every 4 cups of jam you have, you use a 1/4 cup of sugar and 1 tablespoon of pectin, preferably no sugar pectin. And so the first thing we got to do is we have to mix. So we have 6.5 cups. So we had to calculate that, and we calculated it to 1 3/4 tablespoon of pectin. And I didn't have the no sugar, so I'm doing it with the regular pectin. We're going to have to see how it goes. And a 1/3 cup of the sugar. So the first thing we need to do is mix that together separately. So you want to put your sugar and your pectin together in a bowl and mix it really well before you add it into your mixture, your jam. So we're going to get this really well mixed. And in the meantime, I have my pot going with my jars in it. I had to rewash all of my jars, and I've got lids in here ready to go. And right now I'm sterilizing my jars. They'll just stay in there till we're ready. Whoops. Okay, that's mixed. Now we're going to take we're doing the apricot pepper jelly first. We're going to take that, we're going to pour that in the pan. Lord, I tell you, I cannot find my rubber spatula anywhere. So I feel like I'm just not getting my bowls clean enough, and I'm wasting. Oh, sorry. Okay, so there's that. Then we're going to put this one in here. And then you're going to stir in that pectin mixture. And then you're going to do the recipe as you did it before with the regular jam. You need to bring it up to a boil. And since you're not adding sugar after that, you're just bringing it up to a rolling boil until it thickens. I'm not, in the regular jam recipe it tells you a minute at a rolling boil, but I'm going to make sure this is thick. I did not do the plate test. I told you guys, make sure you do the plate test. And when I did the plate test, I was kind of on that, oh, maybe, and I should have just left it on there for, like 3 more minutes, just to make sure that it was thick enough. So I'm going to bring this up to we got to stir this in before I do that. I think I'll use a whisk, because we don't want any clumps. And do it nice and slow. Do not be in a hurry dumping this in, because you don't want to get clumps. Okay, we got that all dissolved in there. And I'm gonna let this sit for a little bit, and as soon as it starts coming to a boil, I'm going to start stirring it. I'm going to bring you in so you can see what the consistency is of it right now. So it's pretty thick, but it needs to get thicker. Okay, we have got this come up to a rolling boil, and I'm going to go for at least 2 minutes and see what it looks like at that point. Right now, that pepper steam is a little bit spicy, but we'll see what it looks like in 2 minutes, and then decide if we want to keep going, and then we'll do that plate test on there and see what that looks like. And you still have to follow all the same stuff as with the other jam, and when you are ready to go to the next step with this, make sure that you skim off any of that foam that has come to the surface of your jam before you put it in your jars. I'm going to bring you in close up here. I've had this going for 4 minutes. I now have the plate in the freezer doing a plate test. I'm trying to figure out a better way besides just boil for 1 minute on a rapid boil. I'm trying to see if it starts setting up on the side. You can see where it's like getting a little gelatinous on the side. And on my spoon, it looks like it is also, I'm trying to zoom this in. Okay, there we go. See how it's sticking to my spoon now? So I'm going to keep this off here until we get that plate test, because I'm pretty sure we're okay right now. You can see how it's like clinging up on the side of the pot, which tells me when it's cool, it should set pretty nice. So we're back. We did the plate test, and as you can see, this is not moving at all. If you drag through there, it doesn't go in at all. And you can see how it's gelled up on the spoon. So I got it all in the jars. I got the lids on, the bands on, and now we are going to get these jars into the canner. I did have this much left over. Don't want that to go to waste, so we'll put that in the refrigerator to enjoy fresh. And we're going to get these in, and once that water comes back to a rolling boil, we'll set that timer for 10 minutes, and then we'll get it back out of the canner. While we are waiting for the canner to come to a boil and boil for that 10 minutes, I'm going to measure out this apricot jam so I can figure out how much pectin and sugar I need for this next recipe. Look at that one set up better. Guys, I don't know. Yeah, I still feel like it's runny. It needs to thicken up a little bit more. It doesn't have to thicken up too much, but we're going to probably have to boil it down by probably a jar's worth in order for it to get that thick consistency that we got with the other one. Isn't that a pretty color though? And I want to get these jars washed so when those other ones come back out of the canner. Okay, that's at a boil now. I'm going to set that. for the 10 minutes. Okay, we ended up with 8 cups of the apricot jam. So I'm going to pour that into this pan. We've got the apricot pepper jam out of the canner. And when I emptied these, I washed all of those jars, and now I've got them in that canner sterilizing. So you can see how runny that is. You can tell it started to set up on the very top of the jar, but not throughout the whole jar. So it's definitely going to have to be cooked down. So I'm going to turn this on so it can start heating up. And in the meantime, since that was 8 cups, we have a half a cup of sugar and 2 tablespoons of pectin. Because remember, it's a 1/4 cup per 4 cups and 1 tablespoon of pectin per 4 cups. And you want to make sure that you mix this together before you put it in your jam to dissolve. You don't want to put them in separately. You want to mix them together in a separate bowl. And then put it in here slowly. Oops, I gotta get that on the burner actually. Okay, I need a different whisk. Okay, and we're going to do this slowly so we don't get any clumps. That's getting nice and dissolved. Do this for about 30 more seconds. And then I'm going to turn up this heat a little bit. Get this to a boil and start bringing it down. We got to boil this down a little bit in order to get it to thicken up, along with the pectin and the sugar. Here we are with the apricot jam. And as you can see, I've had it, I'm probably going to set a timer for this for, let's go with 2 minutes. Okay. And then as you can see, when it goes up on the side, it's still running off the side. There's nothing really sticking up on the side yet. So we'll see what this looks like in 2 minutes. Now it is at a rolling boil. I am going to turn this down just a little bit so it doesn't sputter and spurt so much, but that it'll still stay at that rolling boil. With the hot pepper one, I wasn't getting any foam on the top, but with this one, it looks like I might end up with some foam on this one. Sorry, I'm clogging you up. I'm going to do this for another minute and see what this looks like. I just put the plate in the freezer for the 5 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to continue keeping this warm and in a boil for a couple more minutes. Because I don't want it to start thickening up while I'm waiting for that plate test to be done. See how our jars are doing. Oh, nice and steamy. They're sterilized, ready to go. Let's see. Yeah, see, that's sticking up on that edge now. I really think that's how I'm going to go about checking. See if it really runs down or if it kind of sticks up there a little bit, those chunks. So I'm going to turn this heat down. It's been 5 minutes. I just took this out of the freezer. We're going to run our fingers through here. You see how that's coming back together again? But I've also had it on boil since then. So we're going to grab another plate, stir this up a little bit, and we're going to do another test. Then we'll check it again. And if this one doesn't set up, we'll have to get it back on the heat. Here we are back with another plate test. This was the one that we had already done where it was running together. So let's try this one. It's not running together that way, but if I tip it, it's running. Okay, I'm turning back on the heat. I'm going to bring this back up to a boil and do it for another 2 minutes and try it again. We are on our third plate test. Have some fun eating that one. Nothing wrong with the taste. Okay, so let's try this one. Oh, you can see how this one's dragging. That's better. Okay, it's not closing in. We still got a nice line. Okay, everybody, here's a quick update. The camera battery died right when I had last 2 sentences left to go. This was our last test that we did in the freezer, and as you can tell, it is set up very well by now. And this is our apricot jam, completely done, and you can see that it's not runny anymore. And then we also got the apricot hot pepper, same thing. They've all sealed, and you can tell that they've sealed when you push down on the top, and it is flat. If they hadn't sealed, you would be hearing like a popping on the top of the jar. So that is our video for today. We are out of time, and we will have to come back tomorrow to do the apricot upside down cake. Have a good night, everybody. After doing the apricot jam and the apricot pepper jam over again because we messed it up, it's been sitting overnight and they did set, so I'm really happy about that. I've decided that with that boiling down process, I would probably not go over 3 minutes with doing that rolling boil, because then your jam sets up too firm and it turns into like a paste. So you really want to be careful how much you simmer it down also. So jam is definitely a learning process. People say it's easy, but if you want the exact right consistency, I feel it takes a little bit of practice, because sometimes with your jams, like my peach jam, I had so much juice in that jam that the amount of sugar and pectin that I had in there was just too juicy. So I did have to boil that down a little bit. Definitely do the plate test is what I would recommend, but don't let it get too thick, because then, like I said, it turns into a paste. So I've decided, when you make mistakes, make a cake. So I'm trying to figure out different things to do with the apricots that we have left. And I found a recipe for an apricot upside down cake. And I thought that sounded just delicious. So I'm going to try that today. It's another thing that I have never done before. I've been in many cooking classes. I took FHA and home economics in school, and I've done all of that stuff. But I don't think I ever made an upside down cake. I've even made a baked Alaska, but never done an upside down cake. So I'm going to try that today. and we're gonna see how it turns out. On here I did switch a few things up. We'll kind of go with the recipe, but then I'm gonna give you my variations. Because sometimes in recipes I feel like they don't have the spice that I'm looking for, and I'll add a little bit of this or a little bit of that just to spruce it up a little bit. So the first thing that it says to do, I've got all my ingredients laid out here, and the first thing we have to do is prepare the pan, and I've already got my oven on preheated to 350 degrees. And then it said in a 9-inch round or an 8-inch square to grease and dust with flour a pan. I am going precautionary, and I grease the base. I cut out a piece of parchment, and then I put butter on the top of that with grease, and then I dust it. I want to make sure that my apricots are not going to stick to the bottom of this pan, and the best way for me to know that is if I have parchment paper down. I think that's going to make this a lot easier, and in the end product a lot better looking and taking, you know, it. I just feel like if you're putting apricots on the bottom of a pan with butter and sugar, there's a good chance it's going to try to stick to the bottom of that pan, even if you dust it. So with the parchment paper, I can guarantee I'm not going to have that problem. So I've got my pan ready, and then it says to take, it called for 8 apricots. I did a few more just in case I needed a few extra. And prepare those, cut them in half, remove the pit after you wash them. So those are ready to go. But the first step that we have to do is heat the oven to 350. We did that. Prepare the topping. Lightly grease and flour the pan. We did that. In a small bowl, stir together the melted butter, brown sugar, cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So here's my melted butter. It is 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And then I need a 1/4 cup of light or dark brown sugar. I have that right here. We're going to put that in there. We need a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and this is where I spiced it up. I did a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. I did 1/8 of a teaspoon of turmeric, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ginger, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of allspice. So that's going to give it a more of an earthy flavor for me. That otherwise, just do the cinnamon. So we're going to put that in there. And then you also need a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt, which I also had in there. So now we need to mix that. We are mixing our butter and our brown sugar together. And while we're doing that, it says spread the brown sugary mix in an even layer in the bottom of the pan. So that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to need to make sure that this is really mixed well. Now that we've got that well incorporated, we are going to take and put this in the bottom of this pan. I'm going to just put dollops in different areas so that I'm not pressing and moving my parchment paper. I'm actually going to just use my hands to do this because the fork just wants to keep pushing it around. I have washed my hands. It's kind of like when you're doing a cheesecake and you're putting that bottom layer of graham cracker crumbs on the base of your pan. That's kind of what you're doing with this brown sugar mixture. It's just a thin layer along the whole bottom of that pan. As soon as I get this spread out, I'll show you what that looks like. I was gonna use a springform pan, but decided that wouldn't be a good idea because, you know, that's got that seam there. And with this butter mixture, that would leak right out of that crease. So I decided to go with this instead with the parchment paper. Because I thought at first, oh, the springform, I'll be able to just pull that bottom off also. But not with a liquidy mixture like this on the base. A little brown sugar nugget right there. Okay, there's our brown sugar mixture. Now we're going to take all of our apricots and you're to place them the flesh side down. So we're just going to go along here and drop all these apricots into this dish. And then while this is baking, the last thing I'm going to do with my apricots, I think, is to dehydrate them. And then after I dehydrate them, I'm going to make some apricot bread. Because I feel like if I try to make the apricot bread with the fresh apricots, it might be too wet. So it said 8, but I have smaller apricots than the ones that you would find in the store. I've already got these washed. So I'm going to, I don't even have to cut mine, they just kind of come right out. And the pits come out very easily. There's our apricots. Okay, so the next step is side down evenly on the bottom of the pan. We have to prepare the cake batter. So I have flour right here, and the flour is, you can do 1 cup of flour and 1/2 cup of almond flour. But I never use almond flour for anything else, so I'm not going to go out and buy a bag of almond flour just for one recipe. So I'm doing the 1.5 cups of almond regular flour, and I'm just going to add some almond extract to give it that almond flavor. So I've got 1.5 cups of the all-purpose flour. And then I need 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. And I've got that right here. And I'm going to mix that together really well. You want to make sure that that's well incorporated and that you don't have any lumps of any kind. If you want, you can sift your flour. I often don't take the time to sift my flour when I'm baking. But it never hurts to do that. But I usually don't have clumpy flour. Okay, that's mixed in. I'm going to take our butter, which is 6 tablespoons of butter, and our sugar, and we're going to blend those together until it's nice and creamy. That'll take about 3 minutes. I'm trying to find out exactly how much sugar I use. I keep looking down to look at the recipe to give you guys the exact measurements. It was 2/3 cup of sugar. So we're going to blend this for about 3 minutes and get it nice and creamy. Okay, this is nice and creamy. So now we are going to add the vanilla and almond extract, which was 1/2 teaspoon of each. And if you're just doing vanilla, just do 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then we're going to add 2 large eggs, one at a time. I always put my eggs into a dish before I put them in to my mixtures, just to be on the safe side. And you want to mix that and get that one incorporated. You don't want to overbeat it. Look at these eggs. Aren't those beautiful? These are the eggs from our Buff Orpingtons. They lay nice big eggs. And they're just beautiful. Look at that color. Okay, we're going to get this incorporated. Okay, now I need to grab a half a cup of milk. Now we are going to take half of the flour mixture and then go back and forth with the milk and the flour. Instead of dumping it all in all at once, we're going to go a little bit at a time with each one. Now if you have a stand mixer, you will want to use your spatula or whatever you're using to scrape down the sides of the bowl, just like I am here with my hand mixer. You want to make sure that you get all of that deliciousness in that bowl. Okay, and it says to make sure that you do not overmix on that step. Okay, so now we are going to spread the batter in an even layer over the apricot halves and bake until the cake is set and doesn't jiggle when shaken, is golden brown on top, and a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean, about 35 minutes. So when I'm doing my cakes, I never jiggle them. I always use the toothpick or a knife, but I never jiggle my cakes because I'm always afraid that that's going to deflate them. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the butter and just do dollops. Okay, here we go. We're going to put this in the oven at 350 for, I'm going to do it for 30 minutes, check it at 30, and then I always check it 5 minutes before it says for it to be done. 35 minutes is a good time for this cake. While I was waiting for the cake to get done, I put all of my apricots that were left over that I could save on these trays. So I've got 5 trays ready for the dehydrator. I'm going to get those loaded up. This has to sit here for 5 minutes to cool. Doesn't that look good? And then once that 5 minutes is up, we're going to come back, we'll flip it together and see how it turned out. Okay, here we go. We are back. It's been 5 minutes. We're going to take this plate and we're going to invert it over top of that cake, and then we are going to, I wish I didn't have to use pot holders. Okay. Now we're going to let that sit there for a couple minutes, and then we are going to attempt to take it off. All right, here's the moment of truth. It said to wait for 1 minute and then to take this pan off. Oh my goodness. Ooh, look at that. And see how that parchment paper just kept that on there like that and it just came right out. Oh, look at that beautiful cake. It says that you can eat it warm or cool, whichever way you prefer. But I love how when I took it off, that butter just kind of, that caramelized butter just kind of went around the sides. So since we can eat it warm, I'm going to cut into this and see, because I just can't stand it. Okay, we'll grab a spatula. Okay, here we go. Look at that. That is beautiful. So here you go, you guys. Apricot upside down cake. Thanks for coming along with us today. And if you want to see what other crazy things we do around here, just hit subscribe and we'll see you on the next video.